Two people go silent at the exact same time. Same breakup, same block numbers, same no contact. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why one of them is quietly falling apart while the other is quietly getting stronger. And it's probably not the person you guess. Here's the part that should worry you if you've ever been the empath in this exact situation. The silence you think is healing you might actually be doing the opposite, depending on one thing most people never check. You both stopped texting. Maybe there was a fight. Maybe there wasn't. Just two people who ran out of ways to reach each other and quietly agreed, without saying it, to stop trying. From the outside, it looks like the same silence. Same block numbers, same unfollowed accounts, same night spent not reaching for phone. But it isn't the same silence at all. Because when an avoidant goes no contact and an empath goes no contact right alongside them, two completely different things are happening underneath that shared quiet. Here's what almost nobody tells you about this specific pairing. The silence means something different depending on which side of it you're standing on, and most people never figure out which side is doing what. So they end up reading their own experience onto the other person and getting the whole thing backwards. Stay until the end. Because Truth 5 is the one that explains why the exact moment you finally stop checking your phone is usually the moment they come back. If that sounds like something you want to believe just to make the waiting easier, stay with me. This isn't comfort, it's mechanism. Understanding it is the difference between two people healing in parallel, or two people quietly waiting for the other to be the one who finally breaks. Both outcomes feel identical from inside the silence. They are not identical at all, and by the time you understand why, you'll never read a no-contact period the same way again. To be clear, this isn't a video telling you no contact is secretly a game, or that either person is manipulating the other on purpose. It's about understanding what's actually happening on both sides of it, so you stop guessing at what the quiet means, whether or not the two of you ever speak again. Let's get into it. Truth number 1. For the avoidant, no contact feels like relief. For the empath, no contact feels like grief. And both of them mistake the other's version for their own. Let that one land for a second. The avoidant experiences distance as air finally reaching their lungs, the pressure being needed lifting off their chest, the constant low hum of obligation finally going quiet. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, their nervous system gets to just exist without bracing. The empath experiences that exact same distance as a wound left open, replaying every version of the ending on a loop, still emotionally in the room long after they physically left it. They lie awake reconstructing conversations that already happened, editing them into versions where they said the right thing and the ending changed. Here's the irony sitting underneath all of it. Each one assumes the other feels what they feel. The avoidant assumes the empath is also relieved, quietly moving on somewhere out of sight. The empath assumes the avoidant is also grieving, just hiding it better behind the practice calm avoidants are so good at performing. Neither assumption is true, and that gap between what silence actually feels like on each side of it is the first thing that has to be understood before anything else about this pairing makes sense. Truth number 2. The avoidant silence is protecting them from feeling. The empath's silence is protecting them from repeating. This is where no contact stops being one shared habit and starts being two entirely different survival strategies wearing the same disguise. The avoidant goes quiet because closeness registered as danger somewhere below conscious thought, and distance is the fastest way to lower that alarm. They're not counting days since the last message. They're not tracking the relationship's temperature from a distance. They're simply somewhere their nervous system finally feels safe enough to stop scanning for threat. The empath, meanwhile, goes quiet on purpose, against every instinct they have, because every previous attempt to reach across a silence like this one ended with them absorbing all the emotional labor alone, chasing, explaining, softening, apologizing for needs that were never unreasonable to begin with. Their no contact isn't relief. It's discipline. It is, for many empaths, the single hardest boundary they have ever held, maintain one white-knuckle day at a time, because the alternative, reaching out first, again, and getting the same result, has already cost them too much. Truth number 3. What looks like two people healing at the same pace is actually one person resting and one person restraining. This might be the hardest truth to sit with. For both of you, honestly, on the surface, mutual silence looks balanced, fair, even. two adults giving each other equal space to sort themselves out. But research on attachment dynamics consistently shows that avoidant withdrawal and empathic self-protection are not the same process running in parallel. One is deactivation, a nervous system powering down under threat, and the other is active regulation under real strain. The avoidant isn't fighting an urge to reach out, because that urge was never really there in the first place. The empath is fighting one every single day, sometimes every single hour, white-knuckling their way through moments where the old pattern would have had them typing an apology for something that was never their fault, which means the silence that looks equal from the outside is actually being carried unevenly the entire time. One side coasting on distance, the other side actively resisting a pullback toward the exact pattern that hurt them. This doesn't mean the empath is somehow doing it wrong, or that the avoidant is being cruel on purpose. But treating the silence as symmetrical, rather than two very different internal experiences that happen to look identical from the outside, is how people misread exactly what's healing and what's just numbing underneath the surface. Truth number 4. What the avoidant secretly hopes for is that the empath's growth happens quietly, off to the side, without the empath ever really leaving for good. Pay close attention to this one, because it explains almost every mixed signal that surfaces during a silence like this. The avoidant still checking on how the empath is doing through mutual friends, still noticing the empath's absence more than they expected to, still leaving the door technically unlocked while insisting out loud that it's closed. It sounds like a contradiction, and in a way it is. This is the exact tension this pairing lives inside of. The avoidant wants the pressure gone, wants the empath to stop needing reassurance, stop needing the relationship to be softer and steadier than the avoidant currently knows how to make it. But the avoidant does not want the empath to fully heal into someone who no longer needs him at all, someone who has genuinely moved on and built a life with no room left for a return. What they're quietly hoping for, without ever being able to say it out loud, is an empath who grows just enough to stop hurting, but not so much that the door closes for good. They can't ask for this directly, because asking would mean admitting they still want the empath to stay reachable, which directly contradicts the very distance they created in the first place. So the hope just sits there unspoken, taking up space on the avoidant side of the silence. Truth number 5. What the empath is most afraid of isn't staying stuck in the grief. It's healing so completely that they no longer feel anything at all when the door finally reopens. This is the one that lives underneath everything else. The fear neither of them ever says out loud, for entirely opposite reasons. Because somewhere beneath the relief of finally protecting their own peace, a quieter fear starts building in the empath, that the growth will work too well, that the day the avoidant finally reaches back out, there will be nothing left to reach back with, no charge, no pull, nothing but a polite kind of indifference where love used to be. And here's the strange, uncomfortable truth underneath all of it. Some part of the empath is healing specifically, so they have the strength to walk back in if the avoidant ever returned, while another part is quietly terrified that the healing itself will make returning feel unnecessary altogether. This is why the specific pairing so often resolves in a pattern that looks backwards from the outside. The empath finally reaches genuine peace, stops checking for a message, stops rehearsing what they'd say if the phone ever lit up, and that is precisely the moment the avoidant reappears. It's not timing, and it's not coincidence. It's Truth 4 colliding with Truth 5 in real time. The avoidant sensing, somewhere below words, that the door is actually closing now, and the empath no longer performing calm but genuinely feeling it, which flips the avoidant's fear of closeness into a sharper fear of permanent loss. This is precisely why reaching out first, from either side, so often backfires early from the empath. It answers the avoidance fear too soon, handing back the exact pressure the distance was built to relieve in the first place. From the avoidant, reaching out too early can land on an empath who hasn't finished separating their own peace from the relationship's return, pulling them straight back into the same absorption pattern before the growth had time to actually hold. The narrow space between those two moves is where this entire pairing quietly lives, or quietly ends for good. Here's what matters most, especially if you're the empath standing on your side of silence like this one right now. You didn't go quiet to punish them, and they didn't go quiet to punish you. You went quiet because you finally understood that your peace couldn't keep being the thing that absorbed someone else's fear. They went quiet because closeness triggered something faster than their real feelings could ever catch up to. Neither of those things makes the other person a villain of this silence, even if it would be easier, sometimes, to make them one. So you have two choices. You can hold your healing steady, exactly where it is, not checking, not performing peace for an audience, one who isn't even watching, and let whatever happens next happen on its own timeline, without you bending back toward old absorption patterns just to meet it halfway. Or you can take what you now understand, that this silence was never a verdict on your worth. Just two different nervous systems handling the same ending in two opposite ways, and build a life so full that whatever they eventually decide becomes a footnote instead of a headline. Both choices are valid. Neither one makes you weak. There's no version where holding your peace makes you cold, or where hoping quietly makes you desperate. Both are simply ways of refusing to hand your growth back over someone else's timeline. But only one of them gives you your life back regardless of what they ever decide to do. Healing quietly can absolutely be the right choice, but only if it's done for your own sake, not as a strategy to lure them back through the door. The moment it becomes performance for an audience that isn't watching, it stops being healing at all, and quietly turns back into the very pressure you were trying to release. So whichever path you choose it because it lets you keep living fully, regardless of what happens on the other side of the silence. And that choice starts right now.